Why is it important to understand the idea of compounding of interest? Well, this is where math has an actual application with real life, believe it or not, because compounding of interest happens everywhere. For example, if you have a credit card, unfortunately for you guys, interest is compounded, which means that the longer you don't pay, the more money you ultimately will have to pay the bank. If you get a mortgage, you have to pay interest, and the interest is compounded. If you are investing, then also interest is compounded. So what does that mean, interest is compounded? So let me just give you a quick example, and then I'm going to show you how to use the formula for compound interest. Imagine that you are investing $100, okay? So you have $100 and you invested it for 1 year at 5% interest, so 5% annual rate. Now, to compute the amount of interest, this is going to be 5% of 100, which is actually $5. So at the end of the first year, you're going to get $100 plus that extra $5. So that's going to be 105. Now, you can actually write this down in a little bit different way. Instead of writing it as 100 plus 5, you can write it down as 100 times 1.05. So you will see that that actually will be the same. If you take 100 and multiply by 105, that's going to be 105. Now, if this was just simple interest, then at the end of every year, you would just get an extra $5 and that's it. But if it's compounded interest, then how much money you had in your account, which was 105, gets reinvested. So the $5 of interest is also going to earn you interest, okay? And what happens at the end of the second year? Well, imagine that you invested $105 and now you multiply it by an extra 1.05. And because this 105 was 100 times 1.05, guess what happens? You are multiplying by 105 and then again by 105. So here we got 100 times 1.05 squared. Hopefully you can already see the pattern. What will happen at the end of this third year? Well, that's going to be 100 times 105 cubed. At the end of the fourth year, it's going to be raised to the power 4, and so on. Let me just show you the difference. So if you take 100 multiplied by 105, it's the same thing whether it's compound interest, simple interest, is still 105. Now, if you square it, you get a little bit more money. You're not going to get 110, you're going to get 110 and 25 cents. If you cube it, it's supposed to be 115, but you get an extra 76 cents, and so on. See how the longer you invest, the more money you will get overall, because interest is earning you interest. Now, let's go back to this question. So imagine that we've got $4,000. This is called principal. Okay, this is the amount that was invested. The rate is usually given in percent, and it's 7%. You should immediately convert it to a decimal by dividing by 100. Now, very common people do not get this right because they think that 7 divided by 100 is 0.7, but that's incorrect. So use the calculator and divide correctly. So this is actually going to be 0.07. Okay, then what you need is how many years your investment was there. So this says 11 years. Now be careful. Sometimes the teachers can actually try to catch you, and they are going to say, instead of, let's say, 11 years, they will say something like 36 months. Well, then you need to understand that that's the same thing as 3 years. So time should be in years. The last thing you need is how many times interest was compounded. Now, let me give you a quick table that you should either memorize or hopefully maybe your teacher will allow you to use a little card where you can actually write it down, but it's not that difficult. So the frequency is going to be here, and the number of compounding periods per year will be here, which we call M. Now, if the frequency of compounding is annually, then it's once a year, and M is going to be 1. If it's semi-annually or semi-annually, I'm not sure how to pronounce this correctly, but this is going to be twice a year, so like every 6 months, this is 2. If it's quarterly, which is very common, that's 4, think 4 quarters. If it's monthly, That's 12. This is very common with any kind of mortgages and so on. If it's weekly, this is more rare, but I guess they can put it in. We assume that that's going to be 52 because it's approximately 52 weeks in a year. And if it's daily, okay, so here you got to be careful. A lot of banks actually use 360 for the years. It's just like a rounded version, but we are going to use 365. So 365 days per year. Be aware that sometimes banks will use 360 instead of 365. Okay, so with that said, now you are going to compute, you're going to plug all of this into the compound interest formula that is going to give you amount that's going to be in the account equals P, then it's going to be 1 plus rate divided by m. M is how many times you compound to the power mt. Okay? Now, let's see if we can plug everything using the calculator. Now, I always recommend actually saving these values in variables. So putting something like p equals 4,000. And then just press enter. R equals 0.07. Enter. T equals 11. Enter. And then depending on what's your M, then you're going to start changing it. And then over here, you're just going to type the formula exactly the way that it is appearing in your formula sheet. Okay? Now, MT should be on the top. Now, if you want to round this, you can actually on the next line put the word round, open parentheses, and then click on the answer variable, which is on the bottom right here. That's just going to copy the whatever that answer was, and then let's say comma and 2 decimal places for 2. Okay, so this is how much money you're going to get. And we're going to copy that here. Now, if this was, let me just actually put the calculator side by side now. Let's change the value of M. If it's semi-annual, then it's twice a year. And this is automatically going to compute this for you, so you can just copy paste the answer. Quarterly, all I'm changing this 4 and copying and pasting the number 12 for monthly. And as you can see, the more times you compound, the larger the amount that you will get at the end of the time period. Now, if it's weekly, we're going to use 52. And that would be here. And for daily, we're going to use 365. And that's your answer here. That daily is probably the best thing that you can hope for.